You're the designated appointee?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get back to Marquette. Okay. So police now have a foot and a hand that needs to be identified and some other random body parts.
They had a hand in the case. Sorry.
Fingerprints would have been fairly useless at this point because given the time. And, you know, a 23-year-old woman probably with no conviction history isn't going to have fingerprints on file for anything.
Yeah.
But the foot has some pretty distinct features that are useful. So first, the toes are painted bright red. And second, the person that this belonged to had webbed feet.
Okay.
Right. Very distinctive.
But her husband didn't know that?
So I'm getting to that.
Sorry.
So it's somewhat rare, and you would think people would remember that detail, like the husband. They go back through their recent cases, and there are 2 missing persons reports for females that they look through. They rule one out as a runaway teenager who was living with her aunt. She didn't have webbed toes, and the aunt claims that she never would have painted her toenails. So that leaves Joan. So shoes at the house were found as a fit for Joan, and they pretty much confirm it. Now,
so they just got shoes at the house and
tried them on the foot.
That's just fucking weird. Okay.
They measured the foot, and it was the right size, and the shoes fit.
Imagine this detective trying shoes on with a severed foot.
Well,
like, yeah, it fits.
But you do what you gotta do, right?
How does it feel? Walk around with it.
Stop it.
I'm going back to my shoe salesman days.
You know.
Thanks, Famous Footwear.
Hey, Famous Footwear was good for something.
Yes.
We met there. Yeah.
Well, I met you. You ignored me. Different podcast. Moving on.
Jesus. You're sassy today.
I am.
All right. All right. Sassy. So, remember I said the husband was pretty useless. So when he was asked if the foot could be his wife's, he tells them he doesn't know. He says he never spent too much time investigating her feet.
Sure.
The police find the shoes a match, and they pretty much confirm that this is her. So from there, this starts a search for the person responsible and a look for the other body parts. So they start doing a search of some local bars.
I should have just asked the dog.
Oh my. I mean, the dog probably has done his job.
Okay.
He did good. He found something.
Only found half of it, damn it.
Okay, but
go back and get the rest.
There was no rest to get. Okay. They found everything that was out there.
Oh. Good job.
He did his job. He did a good job.
Okay.
So they're at some bars. They're questioning people. They come across a regular quote-unquote barfly who says that she recognizes a picture of Joan that they're, showing around and asking if anybody recognizes her. Barfly being a not so nice term for, a drunk lady who goes and bar hops.
No. I believe there. Yeah.
Yeah. So she says
I believe they're called cougars now. That's what
cougars. Oh, cougars.
Anyway.
Okay. So she claims she had hit it off with a guy by the name of Marquette, and that the evening was going well. She thought they were gonna, end up hooking up.
Cougar.
And when Joan walked in with another man, Joan recognizes Marquette because the two had gone to elementary school together.
Oh.
I don't know that I could recognize anybody that I went to elementary school with.
Yeah, well, you jumped around.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't live in. Yeah.
Like a lot of I know because I basically grew up with all the people that, were in my elementary school. I mean, some moved away because, we lived on the Air Force Base, but I could recognize most of them if I really, thought about it, I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to recognize anybody because most of my elementary school was in one town, and then I moved in 4th grade I could recognize people from like 4th and 5th grade and junior high because I went to school with most of them. But then I wouldn't recognize anybody from elementary school prior to that. So, yeah. That's what happens when you move a lot.
Yeah. I don't know what that's like.
Sorry. It's not like I moved any place fancy. Yeah.
Merced. It's fancy.
Merced is not fancy.
What?
Although at the time the Air Force Base was there before they closed it, and there was always a lot of stuff going on, I felt like.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, it had nothing to do with me. But anyways. All right. So this Barfly chick trying to hook up with Marquette. Joan walks in. They ended up striking up a conversation and basically getting shit-faced together. And the man, whoever she walked in with, the man, and then this witness that they find are just kind of brushed to the side. So they end up leaving that bar to go to another bar, to go to another bar, to go to another bar. At some point, it's decided they're going to go back to Marquette's house.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a conflict of, did she okay sex or did she not?
Yeah.
They don't have anybody else's account of anything except for Marquette's. At this point, too, I kind of feel sorry for the husband, for Joan's husband, because he's clueless, obviously.
Yeah.
He couldn't have given a shit. But on the other hand, he finds out, not only is she found butchered and dead, but he learns that she wasn't Father's Day shopping. She was out with another guy.
Maybe finding a different father? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, again, he's kind of like this poor schmuck.
I doubt it, but yeah.
Yeah. So with the new info that they have, they're able to hunt down Marquette's little shack house. And he's gone, but they find a piece of bloody lingerie. And then in the fridge, there are more body parts that are wrapped up in newspaper that are confirmed as Joan's other remains. The only thing they end up not finding is her head.
Okay.
Right. So authorities go on a search for Marquette, and because of the nature of the crime and probably their lack of resources, they ask the FBI for help. So the FBI promptly adds Marquette to the 10 most wanted list as an 11th person.
Oh.
This is the first time in history that was done. It was kind of like a temporary measure so that they could get interstate help.
FBI's top 11 doesn't sound as good as the top 10.
No, it truly does not. And it works, though. They find him 3 days later in California working at a salvage yard. So apparently he had just kind of hitchhiked his way down south. He cooperates, and he goes with the FBI quietly. They bring him back to Oregon, and he is just kind of resigned to his fate. So after leading them to the location of the head, which they find dangling, it sounds horrible, it's in a river, hanging off of some wood on the side of the river.
And nobody found it?
Nobody fucking found it.
Nobody even accidentally stumbled across it?
No, it's there. So he leads them to that. He gives them an account of the crime. So it starts out the same way as the witness's story. He was in the bar. Joan came in. She recognizes him. They start a conversation. After going to several bars, they end up at his house. He claims that Joan agreed to have sex with him, and that afterwards they got into some sort of argument about what. I have no idea. He doesn't even go into that.
Yeah.
And then he chokes her to death. From there, he says he had to think quickly. So he dragged her into the bathroom, puts her in the shower, and hacked her body into pieces and drained all the blood from all of them. And then he scattered her remains and booked it out of town.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, the police have to take that at his word.
Yeah. They
don't know exactly what happened other than they have the parts of her body, and they have him, and he's admitted to it. They don't, however, believe the sex was consensual, and they want him charged with rape as well as first-degree murder, which honestly, I'm going to say is kind of amazing because given the time period, most men and most, police or investigators would have assumed that because she was in a bar with another man who wasn't her husband, that going home with a different man, even from that, she was out there for sex. And they would have not assumed that it was anything other than, she was looking for a good time.
Yeah.
So I have to give them some, recognition for that.
Okay.
And, just kind of surprised me a little bit. So everyone that interviews him claims that he was like level-headed. He was just calm. He had a very quiet demeanor. He wasn't agitated. He was just very matter-of-fact, very resigned. But when a psychiatrist interviews him, he is described as seriously emotionally disturbed. Okay. So I don't know what that interview consisted of, but it just seems very different from the accounts of the investigators and even his prior arrest. He was released 6 months early from his previous robbery arrest for good behavior. So, kind of an odd account. He cooperates fully. He pretty much accepts everything that they throw at him. He states he could give no explanation as to why he killed her, and he, quote unquote, says, "I wish I had never met her, but what's done is done."
Yeah.
So from there, he's found guilty. He's convicted to life in prison. Now, from here it sounds done, right?
Yeah.
Done deal. You're convicted, life in prison, you go away. But remember, Marquette's confessed to 3 murders, and Joan was just the first.
Okay.
So how does that happen when he's sentenced to life in prison, you may ask? Well, that is because in 1973, just after serving 11 years in prison, Marquette is again released on good behavior, on parole.
No. Yeah, because I can see if he looks like a model prisoner and he looks rehabilitated, I could see that. And like what you just said,
I guess.
He can fool police officers and everybody else, but not the psychologist or psychiatrist.
Yeah, it blows me away, though. I would think that the severity of the crime would speak for itself, regardless of his behavior.
Yeah. But I don't think they were that in the 60s. I don't think they were that advanced.
No, they were kind of getting, this is right on the edge of like profiling.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think the FBI started that until the 70s, but even the 80s. I don't remember.
Late 70s. Yeah. So, and he's released in 73. So, yeah, he really pulled a number. I don't know. So we next find him in Salem, Oregon, working as a plumber's assistant. In April of 1975, he is convicted of the same type of crime once again. So this time, the remains of a body were eventually identified as Betty Wilson. She was found, or some of her was found by a fisherman in a shallow slough on the Willamette River. Betty had a really sad story, and it makes it even more horrible what happened to her. So the account is that she was living in North Carolina with her very abusive husband in basically a bus that had been abandoned on the edge of a junkyard. No electricity, no running water. They were basically squatting in this old school bus that was just, junk. She, in her very short life, had given birth to 11 children. All of them had been taken away by the state and placed in foster care. She managed to escape her husband by hiding in her sister's car trunk. And the two hightailed it from North Carolina to Salem, Oregon to start a new life.
Okay.
So, very shortly lived, she was last seen at a nightclub before she disappeared. So, it's the same MO as before. Marquette claims they met, hit it off.